I never thought I'd be sitting here, typing this out, but I guess life has a way of smacking you in the face when you least expect it. My name's Mike, and for years I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for nearly 10 years, and honestly, I believed we had a solid, normal life. We had a good routine: work, kids, the occasional date night, and a shared sense of stability. But as with many stories like this, the quiet cracks started showing, and I just refused to see them at first. It started with little things: missed calls, her spending more time out of the house, excuses about work needing to meet deadlines, or late nights with her friends. Nothing too alarming at first. We'd argue occasionally, but mostly it was just the usual marital tension. She'd brush off my concerns, roll her eyes, and call me paranoid. Lisa has always been a bit of a bitch, controlling, manipulative, and quick to dismiss my feelings if they made her uncomfortable. So I brushed off what I saw as her typical attitude, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. Then she started acting more secretive. Her phone became more locked down. She'd hide it the second I walked into the room, and when I tried to look at her messages, she'd get defensive. She'd snap at me, say I was paranoid or insecure. That's when I started feeling a little off, but I told myself I was just imagining things. Maybe I was paranoid, maybe I was overthinking it. Women like Lisa, manipulative, bitchy women, know how to cover their tracks well when they're sneaking around. But the real shocker came about 2 weeks ago. I've been working late as usual, and I came home around midnight, something I rarely do. The house was dark except for the bedroom light. I figured Lisa was asleep, but I noticed her phone was on the nightstand, buzzing quietly. I normally wouldn't snoop, but something about that night felt off. I glanced at her phone just out of curiosity. Don't judge me, I know it's wrong, but I was desperate to understand what was going on. What I saw hit me like a ton of bricks. A series of texts, messages, and emails, all from some guy named Mark. The tone was intimate, flirty even. They were talking about meetings, dates, secret plans. My stomach dropped. I started scrolling further, and that's when I saw it: pictures. Not just texts, but photos of Lisa and Mark together, at a hotel, smiling, holding hands, smiling like they weren't doing anything wrong. The hotel pictures were the worst. They looked like a couple on vacation, not just two people meeting for some sneaky affair. What made it worse? The hotel they'd been meeting at was a place Lisa had always told me was just a business trip or a friend's house. Never a hotel. Never anything romantic. But here they were, confirmed by her own phone. I felt my blood run cold. It was so blatant, yet I couldn't believe it. My wife, the one I trusted, was cheating on me with our son's high school principal. How the hell did I miss all the signs? I remember feeling numb, like my mind couldn't quite process what I'd seen. I kept telling myself, this isn't real, this is some sick joke. But then I thought about the recent behavior: the secret phone calls, her sneaking out late, the excuses she'd given about needing work meetings. It all added up. I knew deep down that I'd caught her. I felt angry, betrayed, and utterly humiliated. Not just because she cheated, but because she'd fabricated some story about behavioral issues in our son, Tim, to justify all these secret meetings with Mark. She told me Tim was having problems at school, that he was acting out, and that she needed to meet with Mark regularly to help him. That was a lie, all of it fabricated to cover her tracks. The worst part: I found out that the detention slips she'd given me, those were fake. She'd been lying about the meetings, lying about our son's supposed behavioral issues, and lying about everything. I was stunned. I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. How long had this been going on? How deep was her deception? I remember sitting there, holding her phone, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even cry, just a hollow numbness. I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I had to confront her. I had to know what she was thinking, what she was feeling, why she did it. But at that moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process how everything I believed in was shattered in a matter of seconds. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. My mind was racing, replaying the images from her phone over and over. I knew I couldn't just keep silent and pretend like I didn't see what I saw. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Lisa was in the kitchen, acting as if nothing had happened. She was humming some stupid tune, flipping pancakes like she always did, but I could see the flicker of her eyes darting around, trying to gauge my mood. I felt my fists clench. The rage was bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. I didn't want to scream or yell. I wanted to confront her cold, hard facts. "So, Lisa," I started, trying to keep my tone neutral but laced with anger. "Care to tell me what you were doing last night? Or maybe the night before that, since it seems you've had a lot of meetings lately." She froze for a second, then turned to me with that bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was in control. "What are you talking about, Mike? I've been working late, that's all. You know how it is, stressful times, deadlines. I told you I can't spend every night at home." "Really?" I shot back, holding up her phone. "Because I found these messages and these pictures. Tell me, Lisa, what exactly is going on here? Who's Mark?" Her eyes narrowed and her smirk turned into something more bitter. "Oh, come on, that's nothing. Just some guy from my work. It's not a big deal." She reached out, trying to grab her phone, but I pulled it back. "Nothing. You're sleeping with our son's high school principal and you're calling it nothing. Are you serious? Those hotel pictures, that's not just some work meeting, Lisa. That's cheating, plain and simple." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I'm working hard to make sure Tim gets the help he needs. Those meetings, those texts, they're nothing, just some misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I repeated, voice rising. "Are you even hearing yourself? You lied about the detention slips, about Tim's behavioral issues. You've been sneaking around, lying to me, to our family. How long has this been going on? Weeks? Months?" She rolled her eyes, looking dismissive. "You're overreacting, Mike. I don't have to explain myself to you. I'm doing this for Tim. He's got problems and I'm trying to get him help. Mark is just a therapist I hired. You're so paranoid." I felt my blood boil. Paranoia, therapist. That was her latest excuse. She always had some way to spin her lies, some way to make me feel like I was the crazy one. But I knew better now. I saw the truth. And it was uglier than I could have ever imagined. "Lisa, I saw the pictures. I saw the messages. You're cheating on me with our son's principal. How could you do that? How could you lie to me, to our son, to everyone?" My voice cracked slightly. I couldn't keep the anger out of it. It was raw, real, and overwhelming. She looked at me with that cold, bitchy stare, like she didn't even care. "Look, Mike, you don't understand what's really going on here. You're just upset because I'm doing everything I can to help Tim. You're overreacting because you're insecure. I don't owe you any explanations." That was it. The final straw. My mind was racing through every scenario, every possible thing I could say or do. I was so furious I wanted to shake her, scream at her, tear her apart. But I knew I had to stay calm, even if inside I felt like exploding. This was going to change everything. I just didn't know if I was ready for what came next. I stormed out of the kitchen, hands trembling. I went straight to the computer, trying to piece together what I could find about Mark, about her meetings, about everything. I knew I had to gather evidence, plan my next move. I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went, and I needed to decide whether I was going to fight for this marriage or walk away. But deep down, I already knew the answer. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. I had to think carefully about revenge, about how I'd make her pay for all the lies and betrayal. Because if there's one thing I'm learning, it's that when a woman like Lisa cheats, she doesn't just cheat. You have to make her regret it. And I was already brewing a plan in my head, something she wouldn't see coming. After that confrontation, everything about our life seemed to shift. I couldn't look at her the same way, and I sure as hell couldn't trust her anymore. The more I thought about it, the more clear it became that I needed to do something, something big, because Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was orchestrating a complete betrayal that was tearing apart everything I thought I knew about her. I spent the next couple of days obsessively digging into her phone, her emails, her social media. I needed proof, something concrete I could use to confront her again, or worse, to expose her if she tried to deny it later. I also started talking to some of her colleagues, trying to see if I could find out more about Mark. I wasn't planning to just walk away quietly. No, I needed leverage, and I needed to make her pay. During this time, I noticed her behavior getting even more bitchy and dismissive. She'd snap at me for the slightest thing, accuse me of spying on her, and throw that same dismissive smirk if I pressed her about her whereabouts. It was like she knew she was caught, but she was trying to act like she was the victim. That made me angrier, how she always made everything about her, about how she was the victim, even when she was the one cheating and lying. I also discovered something else. It turned out Lisa had been fabricating her own version of Tim's behavioral issues. She'd been making up stories, giving him detention slips she'd forged herself, apparently to justify all her meetings with Mark at the hotel. I found some of the fake detention slips hidden in her drawer, poorly forged, but enough to prove she'd been lying. That was the moment I realized she'd been manipulating everything, not just me, but our son too. She'd been lying about his problems so she could sneak away without suspicion. The more I uncovered, the more I realized I wasn't dealing with a woman who just cheated. It was something much darker. Lisa had been lying for so long, covering her tracks, playing the victim, and manipulating everyone around her. Honestly, it made me sick. She wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a master manipulator, and I felt like I'd been played for a fool. I decided I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The next step was confronting her again, but this time I wanted to do it with everything I'd gathered. I was going to lay out all the evidence, proof of the affair, the fake detention slips, the lies about Tim's behavioral issues. I wanted her to see how deep her deception went and to understand that I wasn't going to be her pawn anymore. One evening, I sat her down in the living room, my hands trembling slightly as I spread the evidence across the table. Her eyes widened as she saw the photos, the texts, the forged detention slips. She started to sweat, her bitchy facade cracking just a little. I could see her trying to come up with some excuse, some way to spin it, but I wasn't buying any of her bullshit this time. Lisa, I said firmly, voice cold but controlled, I know everything. About you, Mark, the hotel, the fake detention slips, everything. You lied to me, to our son, to everyone. How long has this been going on? And what the hell were you thinking? Pretending to help Tim when you were actually just sneaking around with your little boyfriend. She looked at me, her eyes flashing with anger and guilt. Stop being so dramatic, Mike. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I was only trying to help Tim. You don't understand what's really going on here. Don't give me that, I retorted. You've been lying to everyone. All those meetings at the hotel with Mark. I know what was happening, and I know you're cheating on me. You've been lying about everything. I trusted you, Lisa. I really did. But now I see you for what you are, just a manipulative, unfaithful bitch. The room was silent for a moment except for her breathing, heavy and erratic. She finally said, "You're overreacting. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't need to explain myself to you." That was the moment I realized there was no convincing her. No matter what I said or showed her, she'd keep spinning her lies because that was who she was. So I decided enough was enough. I was done playing her game. I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I knew I needed to prepare for the next phase, something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I knew I had to be strategic now. I wasn't just going to file for divorce and walk away. No, I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal. I wanted her to see what it felt like to be played, manipulated, and discarded. I started thinking about how I could turn this around, use her own lies against her, and get some kind of revenge. Because if she thought she was going to cheat and lie her way out of this, she was dead wrong. I was going to make her regret ever messing with me. Over the next few days, I kept gathering everything I could find. I wasn't just going to confront her again. I wanted her to know I was serious. I started talking to some people, her colleagues, her friends, anyone who might have insight into her little affair or her manipulative ways. I needed to understand her better, how she thought she could get away with this, and more importantly, how I could turn her own game against her. One night, I decided to set a trap. I knew she'd be sneaking off again, probably to meet Mark or whoever he was. I didn't want to just catch her, I wanted to catch her in the act with proof in hand. So I installed a hidden camera in the living room, aimed at the front door. If she left again, I'd know exactly when and where she was going. I wasn't going to give her any more chances to lie or manipulate her way out. The days felt like hell. I stayed up late, watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up again. And she did. Sure enough, one evening I saw her sneak out after pretending to go to bed early. She slipped into her car and I followed her on my phone's GPS. She went to a nearby hotel, no surprise there, and I parked a few blocks away, watching from a distance like some kind of obsessed stalker. What I saw confirmed everything. She entered the hotel with Mark, no doubt in my mind, and they disappeared inside. I felt a surge of rage and heartbreak all at once. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I couldn't just barge in and cause a scene. I had to think smarter than that. I took pictures of the hotel, of her entering, and I made sure to get the license plate of her car. This was all evidence I could use, proof she was actively cheating, caught in the act. The next step was to decide what I was going to do with this information. I could just file for divorce, but honestly, I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions. I wanted her to know she couldn't just lie and manipulate her way out of this. I wanted her to pay for all the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. So I sat down and drafted a plan. I was going to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out. I'd show her the pictures, the evidence, and tell her exactly what I knew. But I wasn't going to just threaten her. I was planning to make it clear that I knew everything and that I had the power now. That I'd been betrayed, and I'd be damned if I let her get away with it without consequences. During this period, I also started considering what my next move would be if she refused to come clean or tried to gaslight me again. I was prepared to leave to take the kids and start over, but I also wanted her to feel the pain of her own lies. Revenge was starting to look more appealing than I'd ever thought possible. I didn't want just a divorce. I wanted her to regret ever crossing me. One night I sat her down again. I told her I knew everything. The hotel, Mark, the fake detention slips, the lies about Tim's behavior. I showed her the pictures, the GPS logs, and the photos I took that night at the hotel. Her face went pale and she started to stammer excuses, but I cut her off. "Lisa," I said coldly, "you've been lying to me for months. You think you're clever hiding all this, but I see everything. I see what you've done, who you've been with, and how little you care about anyone but yourself. You're not just cheating on me, you're manipulating our son's life, fabricating stories, and lying through your teeth." Her voice was trembling, but she still tried to spin it. "Mike, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. I was only trying to help Tim. Mark, he's just a friend. We're not doing anything. Stop." I interrupted. "Save it. I don't want to hear another lie. I've had enough. You think you can lie your way out, but I'm done being your fool. You're going to regret this, I promise you." That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I was ready to show her the door, to end this charade once and for all. The betrayal was too deep, and I wasn't going to be her punching bag or her idiot anymore. I realized I had to be prepared for whatever came next: divorce, legal action, custody battles. But whatever it was, I was done being the victim. I was finally taking control. I never thought I'd be in this position, but now that I was, I realized something. Betrayal cuts so deep, but sometimes you have to hit back hard. Not with violence, but with sharp truths, proof, and the resolve to walk away from someone who never truly cared about you in the first place. Lisa was a manipulative, lying cheat. Someone I thought I knew, but turned out to be just another con artist. And I was done playing her game. The aftermath of that confrontation was even more brutal than I expected. Lisa's face was a mask of shock and rage, but I could see the flicker of defeat behind her eyes. She tried to deny everything, spin her web of lies, but I had enough proof. Photos, GPS logs, forged documents that she couldn't escape. Still, she clung to some semblance of control, insisting she was only doing what she thought was best for Tim, that it wasn't about us, that I was overreacting. I told her flatly that I'd had enough of her lies, that I was done being manipulated and played for a fool, that I was tired of her acting like she was the victim when she was the one who'd been cheating, lying, and undermining everything we built together. I made it clear I was prepared to take action, file for divorce, expose everything publicly if I had to, and fight for custody of Tim. I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down anymore. She threw a fit then, screaming at me, calling me insecure, saying I was jealous, that I didn't understand her reasons. She called me all the names under the sun, but I stopped listening. The damage was done. I knew exactly what kind of person she was now, and I was done letting her control the narrative. In the days that followed, I started preparing everything legally. I contacted a lawyer, got copies of all the evidence I'd collected, and began to plan how I would approach the situation. My mind was focused. I knew I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. This time, I was going to make sure she paid for everything she'd done. But the thing that surprised me most was how I felt. I'd been so devastated, so betrayed, that I thought I'd be sinking into some kind of deep depression. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief, like a heavy weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. I was angry, sure, but also strangely empowered. I realized I'd been living in her shadow for too long, accepting her lies and manipulations. Now, I was finally taking control. It was almost like I was waking up from a nightmare. I started thinking about how this all happened, how a woman I once loved and trusted could become so manipulative, so dishonest. It made me reflect on myself too, how I let her get away with so much for so long. But I also knew I'd never let anyone do that to me again. I sat my kids down, explained a little of what was happening without going into too much detail. They were too young to understand everything, but I wanted them to know I was there for them, that I was fighting for our family's dignity. My son Tim looked confused, but I promised him that everything was going to be okay, that I would make sure he was safe, and that his mother's lies wouldn't hurt him anymore. Honestly, it's been a roller coaster. Every day I wake up with a new resolve. I want to rebuild my life, even if that means starting from scratch. I've learned that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, but it also reveals who you are deep down, whether you fold or stand tall. I chose to stand tall. I refuse to be a victim anymore. Looking back, I see the signs now more clearly than ever. The secretive phone, her dismissiveness, the fake detention slips, her constant lies. I should have seen it sooner, but I was blinded by comfort and routine. Now I know better. Never ignore the warning signs. Never. Think someone who manipulates and lies will change. Because once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Better to cut your losses and walk away. At least then you can start to heal. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize this was a fight I had to fight, even if I wish I didn't have to go through it. Lisa's betrayal cut deep, but it also awakened something in me. I learned that trust isn't something to take for granted, and that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you're supposed to trust the most. I also learned that no matter how manipulative someone is, the truth will always find a way to come out in the end. Divorce is messy, and it's not something I took lightly. The legal process was a nightmare, hours of court, custody battles, and a lot of emotional draining. But I stayed firm because I knew I was doing the right thing for me and my kids. I wanted them to see that honesty and integrity matter more than any gift or apology she'd thrown my way. They're young, but I want them to grow up knowing what real loyalty looks like, and that cheating, lying, and manipulation only bring destruction. I won't pretend I'm completely healed. Sometimes I wake up feeling bitter, angry, and foolish for ever trusting her in the first place. But I also feel lighter, freer somehow. This experience forced me to confront what I really value: honesty, respect, and dignity. I've started rebuilding my life now, and surprisingly, I find myself happier than I've been in years. I'm reconnecting with old friends, focusing on my work, and spending quality time with my kids. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's that you can't ignore red flags, no matter how much you want things to be perfect. It's better to face the truth head-on than to live in a lie, because eventually the truth will come out, and when it does, it can destroy everything. But from that destruction, you can also find a new beginning. That's what I'm doing now. I've learned to value myself more, to stand up for my dignity, and to trust my instincts. I don't hold any hatred toward Lisa now. I see her for what she is, a manipulative person who wasn't worth my pain. I hope she learns from this, but honestly, I don't care anymore. My focus is on moving forward, rebuilding my life, and making sure my kids never doubt how much they're loved. Betrayal hurts, it scars, but it also teaches. And maybe, just maybe, it's better to know the truth early, so you can heal, grow, and find someone who truly deserves your trust. I don't regret standing my ground, and I don't regret finally choosing myself over someone who only ever lied to me. That's the lesson I'll carry forever.